Hey everybody, Helping Hands here. I've had some requests come through about me covering the recent Relic stream that they did about the preview for Umber Wasp. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Let's switch the scene over to here and get into it. Here we go. So let's start it up. And I'm going to be probably fast forwarding bits and stuff, just to, try and condense it down because it is a 40-minute stream, and I'll try and condense it down to like most important stuff that you guys will probably want to care about, and we'll just skip all the fluff and waffling. Okay, so here we go. So gameplay changes. So some changes to vehicle pathing, infantry pathing, unit selection, ping changes, and tactical map. So we're going to start off here with the 221, and the changes to this is great. For instance, because you know how it used to just go in and would turn to left or turn to right before it get the shot up, and when it did that turn, the vehicle that would be aiming it would get away. Here it now just goes straight in and aims and gets the shot off, which is much better, as you'll see here.
The right or to the left in order to get closer to the enemy vehicle when it was an attack move order, when they could perfectly just do a line to the enemy and keep their gun facing the enemy. This is really
But
important
you can
for
see
those
there,
types of vehicles.
no, the vehicle
So
doesn't turn to the
again, I
left or
think
right
this will
instantly,
be a
gets in
really
it
good change
and
and
gets the
really
shot
good
off. So
in terms
this will be
of
good for things like
gameplay impact.
this 221, or if you like the
Um,
Marder,
Another
Stokes, things
thing
like
that
that. So they haven't got to
we
do so much turning. They'll be able to just
that
get the shot off straight away. Next, we'll get on to the infantry cohesion.
For infantry, there were a lot of pathfinding changes and uh, somewhat other changes to address some response from infantry. So we changed some of the ways that, for example, we handle infantry leaving out of buildings. So that should feel more responsive. For pathfinding in particular, we had a look at
Seems to be a little
how
bit smoother going forward
infantry
there.
was basically choosing their paths as well, and we basically removed what was a cover preference that was really hidden to the player. So previously, infantry would actually choose paths that had more cover in the path, which often meant that from a player perspective, this was really not that well surfaced, which meant that
Yeah, so here
infantry
you can
would
see it's
sometimes
more of a
take some
direct
detour
line in
paths
there to
just
get
because it had better
to
cover,
that
where
green
now they'll
cover on
actually
that
take the direct path.
wheeled vehicle there. So
Again,
that's
like
definitely better overall. I think quicker
the
because if
behavior that is
more
wanted
precise
here is
movements
that
are
from a player perspective,
always
you
better
really
for
want to
in
be able
my
to
opinion.
tell.
Next up, we're moving on to infantry phase retreat.
Another one was that. So I see that in the
So we can
video.
see here we have two
So zero unit
Shermans
retreat.
blocking the retreating,
So
well,
previously
should
we
be blocking the
had
retreating
problems
of
with
these
infantry just
riflemen.
doing infinite retreat loops. Um, it was really actually really easy to trigger on
They
a
would
critical
phase
mass
through
where
beforehand, and this is what
if you
after. So
block
now they'll,
the path
if
into
you
like
micro your vehicles
that
correctly,
should
now it
be
looks like you'll
followed
be,
around if you can
blocking
perform the
certain
retreat.
retreat paths, so you could use this to your advantage.
Something that we wanted to address there was how to make things consistent. And the design pattern there is that once you press retreat, you should feel secure that your units will actually do their best to get back to base. So what we added there was that infantry, while retreating now, can phase through things. If they can path around, they'll still attempt to do that. But if there's literally no other path,
Yeah, noticing
they will
a
do
lot of the
that
infantry
to
here, like going backwards and
friendly
forwards on each
vehicles
other,
and
trying to
enemy
get through
vehicles.
that gap. And now,
Another thing that is really meaningful
still
to
doing a bit of
infantry
backwards and forwards, but
is that
better overall.
you
They
weren't able
definitely
to pass
funneled in a
through
bit
some of
quicker
the
than
team
before. So yeah,
weapons
a little bit of improvement there.
bonding boxes. So what we did was is we now allow infantry to pass through the team weapon, which should be a lot better or feel a lot better. Tight corridors. Lots of maps had these problems. Uh, Another thing that I saw that the video is showing is that the infantry entities or soldiers from a singular squad will now take will basically fidget less when going through tight corridors as well. Um, so what it should feel like is that entities will not or soldiers will not go back and forth anymore when going through tight spaces. They should now just smoothly every single
A little bit
soldier go
better, not
through
much of a huge
the
change there
corridor.
personally. I don't know.
This is actually really noticeable as well with what was being shown in the video. So when you have a piece of cover, previously going back and forth in the piece of cover would mean that some soldiers would basically get off the formation because they would attempt to avoid the soldier that was in front of them. So now, hopefully,
Yeah, I guess
when
overall
doing
most of the guys stick on the cover
or when
after issuing a
choosing a
second
cover
commandment.
position,
So yeah, I guess it's a little bit of
soldiers feel
improvement.
a lot more
You know,
responsive.
not too bad.
Um, and finally, another thing that we did that we noticed was squad cohesion. So squad cohesion is a really important aspect of Company of Heroes, and it can mean the difference between your squad getting suppressed or not suppressed if one entity or one soldier basically goes off course. So what we did is we adjusted basically how the infantry or the soldiers react to the rest of the infantry squad, and now they should prefer to stick with the rest of their squad and not go around obstacles, which again could, in many maps, mean the difference between getting into the arc of fire of a team weapon or not. Um, there's something extra that we added that is not
That
strictly
one,
pathfinding.
yeah, that one we don't have a video about, but you can
Yeah.
definitely talk about it.
So we added a little bit of vehicle crushing back. This only happens though if the infantry is pinned. So now if the infantry is pinned and you have a medium vehicle go over them, you will kill and crush the infantry.
Okay, so only when the infantry is
Yes,
pinned. So there, this is
yes.
not the comeback of vehicle crushing everywhere on the
It,
map, right?
yes, it's not. No.
Okay, just making sure we're making things very clear here. Okay, so we went over
Okay,
pathfinding.
so they've not gone
Now,
to going on to explain why they've not wanting to bring vehicle crushing back fully, which is a huge shame because I think most people enjoy full crushing, where you have like a medium vehicle and you go straight into an enemy blob and you be able to crush them if they're up against a tight space, or if you're quick enough, you should be able to take them out. I think a lot of people enjoyed that. It was really good to defeat people who just love the blob, which is not. It's a very easy strategy to do. So being able to deal with people who just blob with better vehicle micro. It's a shame we won't be able to really do that anymore in Company Heroes 3. But at least they brought back some kind of vehicle crushing, being able to run over pinned units. That's definitely an improvement. But I would love a return to full vehicle crushing that we had in Co 1 and Co 2.
do you want to talk to us a little bit about unit selection? Because that was in our
Mhm.
roadmap for this update, and ultimately, what are we doing about that?
Yeah, so with unit selection, we actually had a lot of changes that we were able to do earlier than expected. And that was what we saw with the 1.2.3 patch that we released, where we brought a lot of those unit selection changes that should have been for 1.3. But that is to say that the work is still ongoing and we'll do more. So basically, what is going to be happening for 1.3 is that we made a lot of the selection for weapons that are on the ground or team weapons to be more easily selectable. Whereas before, you would have to almost micro the micro adjustments to be able to select the thing and pick it off the ground.
Specifically, yeah,
But
that's a
there
good
are more.
point. So, like, let's say you had as a decrewed mortar or something, and you wanted to recrew it. It was very hard to hit, to try and get that select the right hitbox for you to be able to recrew. So that's a great change. But again, this was an issue in previous Company Heroes titles, so they're just like catching up Code 3 to the level of Code 2. Nothing like massive here. It's just what the game should already have. Basically, they're finally getting in.
More changes coming, although we had to push them to the next update. But things that community has been calling out that we want to address is when you have multi-selection, often the retreat or the reverse button will be hidden. So we'll do more of what Company Viewers did, which is when you have multi-selection, retreat and reverse actually get split into different abilities. They do not overlap anymore.
Yep, that's good.
And we also have changes to the way the priority of the decorators. So we pushed a change in 1.2 that made it easier to select vehicles when lots of infantry was around them. But that ended up causing another problem with vehicles now actually have more priority than decorators. So often you want to select like an engineer that's repairing a vehicle and you end up selecting the vehicle. So something that we are doing to address that
Mm.
is we are making the decorators actually have the highest priority, so that shouldn't happen anymore.
I'm
Um,
hoping this is a fix to the issues where I don't know if you guys experienced this as well, but for instance, when I'm trying to like repair something or try and retreat, or reverse something, I accidentally sometimes retreat something when I just want to reverse a vehicle because the selections are not working like they would do in Code 2. So hopefully, what Miguel is talking about there, it's Dev M. He's saying that they've kind of hopefully fixed that issue there. So that's a good change.
I am fiddling with
Okay,
the
so here's the new
keys. There we
pings. So the
So do you
pings
want to
now look
talk
different. Look
a
on the
little
mini
bit
map as
about
well.
the
Different
improvements we
icons
made
and
to
different things. So
pings?
let me just pause it for a second here. You can clearly see the different pings. Red for attack, blue for defend, and I think the capture here marker that is green. And they both radiate kind of like these circles out from these icons as well on the map, which looks
yeah.
quite good.
So now we have this light beam that you can see on your screen. That is to improve visibility of the ping.
And also the
So a big
cursor.
problem that we had was just how clear
You can see when I pause it.
the
You can see
pings.
the cursor itself has the icon as well, so you know what you've selected before you actually put the ping down. So if you made a mistake, you can go back and change it.
Read the tactical map
The
in the
tactical
sense
map
that we
now.
have so many big icons, and it's harder to select some of the icons or some of the units. So what we did is we reduced that, and also we actually centered the shield on top of the unit. So now you don't have the disconnect between where the unit is and where the decorator is on the tactical map. But I'm just going to leave a sneak peek that there will just be a little bit more changes coming to make that tactical map look a little bit better as well.
Okay.
Right. Okay, well,
1v1 Pachinko Farms, Casino Farms. Have you pronounced that? Then you've got the new South Wetlands, a 44 map in Africa, which looks really good. Like got these nice waters and palm
the
trees and
next
stuff there,
update.
so that looks good.
Will, before you
And
start,
map weight as
I
well,
will
whatever
throw
that
us
is.
to
So we'll just
actual
fast forward
gameplay
here.
While we're getting
Here we
the
go. Here's a
game warmed
preview
up,
of the new map.
So we have mentioned we're doing a bit of a rework of the 1v1 version of Pacino Farmlands, or
Chino,
Pacino.
that's how you
Sorry,
pronounce it.
Marco. This is a simple rework. We don't want to go overboard on some of our maps. For those of you who were aware, Pacino launched originally as a 2v2 map. We saw some potential in making a 1v1 version, but the version that we launched with wasn't as good as we wanted.
Not sure why Will's
The
talking about
territory in
Chino when
particular
they're showing the
wasn't
new
really
44
conductive
map,
of
but there you go.
competitive gameplay. So that was the main focus. So the new version of Pacino, not what you're seeing on screen. This is the new map. Pacino is now a nighttime map. It has a more competitive territory layout. It's received loads of cover changes, and it plays in a different direction to the 2v2 version. It will still be very familiar. It's not going to be visually starkly different. We didn't want to turn it into a brand new map. We wanted it to be familiar. But yeah, this is something that
Some high ground here on the south.
I can easily work on in the background when our artists are working on other things. So, for example, while our artist was working on Seuss Wetlands here, it was my opportunity to look at some bugs and look at some improvements to our other maps, and Pacino was the top of the list. On that note as well, even though we haven't mentioned them by name, we are also constantly making improvements on all of our other maps.
So far, it looks quite nice. This map. It's
So,
kind
for
of
example,
open, decent bits of cover
I
and
know that
elevation
there's
here
a
and there.
divided player base on Taranto Coastline, which is another one of our 1v1 maps. That has also received a number of territory and pathfinding updates. Not as much as Pacino, but we know that this is not the most competitive map, and we've made some tweaks to make it a little bit more. On that note, we specifically with Taranto wanted to get rid of a load of blockers. So things like big rocks have been removed so that you can open the map up once heavy crush vehicles come into play. I'm seeing comments about Taranto being the best map. Yeah. But across the board as well, we've also made some tweaks to assets, minor things that you may not notice, but hopefully will make all of our maps feel a lot better, especially our Africa maps. We, for example, had a pile of rocks which was heavy crush. Especially if you think about Road to Tunis, there were some lines of cover there that were always heavy crush and are difficult to remove, and they are now swapped out for a new variant which is medium crush, so you can destroy them a lot earlier with AT guns or mortar fire, and you can crush them in the mid to late game.
I mean, I
Reducing the
definitely
amount
feel
of
like this
cover.
44 map, even though I've not seen much
So
of it at the
these
moment, I feel
changes
like it's
have
going
gone
to
on
be, it's
across
already looking
all
much
of our
better
maps.
than the other 44 map that came
Also, in tandem
out
with
recently.
a load of the pathfinding
I'm
and
not a
merge
fan of
improvements
that map because it's just
Miguel
too
and the team
many
have been doing,
like
we have also
cliffs and
done a lot
stuff
of
in the
pathfinding
center. It's a very
improvements across all
small,
of our
you know, a few
maps.
angles to get in, push the
Again,
center of the
these are
map,
the
and it's
sorts of
not
things
very
that you
good.
probably won't notice visually, but in terms of gameplay, everything will feel a little smoother. For those of you who have looked at our editor and you've tried making your own maps, you'll notice that we work on a grid system, on a 1 by 1 meter grid, which means something as small and benign as a lamppost, if it's in the wrong position, can take up a 2 by 2 meter square instead of something as small as a 1 by 1. So going through all of our maps with a fine-tooth comb and adjusting everything so that it takes up less space means that you can get more infantry into a single piece of cover. It means that vehicles have an easier time getting around buildings and walls. Generally speaking, all of our maps
Okay, we
should
get a
play
bit of an
just
idea of this map. I was
smooth
hoping, I was
sweat
going to fast forward a
for
little bit, and
long
hopefully
time.
show some of the top side of this map.
And then you've got these lowlands, but yeah, an ancient city. I have no doubt, being a 4v4 map,
This is
we will
interesting. So, like, whoever controls this, like, center ridge will be able to see who's on the other side and have like maybe the high ground advantage of anyone approaching from the other side. So, owning this central ridge will be quite quite important. But I imagine it's going to be difficult though for either side to try and come back and grab this center ridge. Because look, the center ridge also owns green cover, so they not only do they have the high ground advantage, they've got green cover as the opposing side will try and push up against that. So yeah, we'll see how they're going to balance that out.
That style of combat. It will be very,
It's
very
interesting.
bloody.
Let's see.
Your
Can we
areas that you
look
want
at
to
the north?
focus on
So
for the
the top of the
majority.
map looks a lot more
And that will
urban.
get you started. That will give you a scale. That will give you focus. So we
Quite
have
nice.
the walled
Lots of
city,
little
for example,
lot
that
of
you're looking
little
at now.
sneaky ways for
This is
flanking
the
infantry
urban
around
area.
as well.
This is the first part of the map that was built, and it was only here then. But there isn't much here, but that is intentional. We wanted open ground. We wanted to make it still look like it is North Africa. We don't want to fill space unnecessarily. And that's also difficult to do. It's difficult to let yourself go and not overfill and overuse the spaces and the assets. Minimalism is a tricky thing in game design.
Yeah, well,
We
I
also
think you've done a
find
good
with
job so
bigger
far from what
maps,
I've
and
seen. It looks pretty
Africa in
nice, but again,
particular,
I'll have to
we
test
don't
it and
have as many map assets.
give it a good go myself. Let's see if we can fast forward then. Anything else? This looks like it's all just this map. Let's have a look here. Scroll down to this bit.
Here and there, right? Now we're gonna go to Jason. Jason, how are you today?
We've got faction balance,
Hello,
Africa
hello.
core, and anti-air. Here we
Hello.
go. These are some big things.
So,
So we've gotten some minor tweaks for the Wehrmacht, the USF, and the Brits. USF's changes were fairly modest, but they were mostly to address kind of the armored build, rifleman spam in particular, some minor nerfs on that front. In terms of
What about air support
the
center?
Wehrmacht, we gave some love to some of the more underused units in the faction. So some examples are like the Stummel, the Wirbelwind, as a few units. But for the most part, both of these factions haven't seen major changes. They're mostly like tweaks. Most of our focus has gone into the main deliverable of the DAC pass. So this isn't a full faction overhaul, just quick disclaimer out front, but we did do quite a few changes to kind of address what we see as kind of the pain points for DAC. One is they have a little bit of a lack of infantry diversity in the early game, especially if you go higher up the ladder. There's only really one or two viable ways of kind of opening as them, and we're trying to expand this, especially in terms of their infantry. So we have some changes to Panzer Grenadiers. We have some buffs to Bursas. We have added the Panzerjäger infantry unit to the core army.
Right.
It is now
Finally, this is what I've been asking for since the release, I never understood why the Panzerjäger was you only could call it in the 250 half track. Now that it's in tier 1 as like a core unit is amazing, so you have some reliable AT that you can always call onto the field, and so you'll be able to deal, much easily be able to deal with something like a Stuart spam, or light vehicle spam in the early game. Beforehand you'd only be able to ever have realistically one Panzerjäger, and then you'd have to rely maybe on Marder. But if you could have maybe two Panzerjägers and a Marder, it definitely makes it a lot more viable for you to maybe fend off that Stuart spam or things like that come at you. So I think it's a really good change. Maybe it took a little bit too long for them to realize that and put it into tier 1, but finally they've listened and they put it into tier 1. Hopefully that'll allow diversify some builds as well. Don't forget also the Panzer can also upgrade the machine gun as well to make it decent against infantry.
And the tier 1 building. So quite a few changes on that front. There's also a few other changes to the deck, and we've also rearranged the Italian infantry battle group. So hopefully this should be a lot easier to integrate into 1v1s. We know that this battle group, while it's pretty popular in 4v4, it hasn't been as compelling in 1v1s, so hopefully these changes can kind of address that. So yeah, some really big changes to DAC. Now, I know some are concerned, like, did we consider like DAC to be weak? And we just overbuffed them. That wasn't the idea. It was more that we know that like DAC was strong, but in very strange ways, and it had very clear weaknesses as well. So we're trying to adjust the faction without increasing its power level overall, but we'll kind of see how that boils out. And then in terms of anti-air,
yeah. So before he gets into this, anti-air, one of the things I recently played Company Heroes. Actually, I think it was day before yesterday, and I got sick of playing Company Heroes 3 after a couple of matches because I just couldn't be bothered to deal with the amount of airstrikes and off-map abilities that were used after you're like 5 or 6 minutes a game and you're already getting strafed straight away. And I think one of the big pains for me is the weakness of anti-air and how easy it is to spam it, especially now that nearly every American, they have like their own free airborne doctrine with the fact that they can go air support center and then they can choose another commander as well. And with the air support center, they can just do any kind of off maps and stuff as long as they got the munitions. And it really sucks. And another big issue for me when I'm playing Company Heroes, guys, is how quick the VPs drain down. There's literally hardly any time to mount a comeback if you have a bad start to the game. And I much prefer the VP countdown, the rate of VP countdown on Company Heroes 2. I hope that gets changed. But let's just listen to what Jason has to say about anti-air.
I've done basically a major bounce pass over all of the air anti-air weapons and the air abilities. So now we're kind of moving to a new kind of system where all the AA pieces, we'll call them, are kind of standardized now. So they kind of do similar amounts of damage. So for players playing with or around AA, it's more about how many pieces you have, rather than having very bespoke relationships between all of them. There are some exceptions, like the 88 is definitely going to be more powerful than like a Whirlwind, for example. But yeah. And the main change on this front is that all of the air off-map abilities have kind of their durability kind of adjusted by class. So basically, strafes are one tier, diving bombs or like bombing runs are one tier, recon are kind of there in their own tier, loiters in their own tier. They all have different amounts of durability, but the real big shift is one AA piece will now be able to shoot down strafes in certain scenarios. Not in every case, it won't completely shut down all strafes, but you will be able to shoot down strafes with just one AA piece, which is a very big difference from basically how we've had AA for
recently,
most of the game.
AA just not been able to shoot at any planes, so at least
hopefully
if
that
you've got two
1v1
guns on the field,
if you have access to anti-air,
strafe,
it actually has value. But also in team games, we've also balanced it so that roughly you need two pieces to kind of cover an area of the map. So that way you can counter air, but there's still room for air to breathe, especially on the bigger team games where people can really get out quite a few AA pieces. And also, to just be warned, there are also air abilities that are kind of high altitude or high durability. So like the carpet bomb from the airborne, you're not going to be really able to... Like, you can still shoot them down with AA, but you're going to need a lot to really shoot them down. So yeah, that's kind of a really high level... most of those changes.
Yeah, there was some question about the 88 in chat. Do you want to touch that one?
What was it?
It was mostly like what's happening with it.
The 88 on its own is not being changed that much. So it's still gonna be able to every now and then one shot a plane from the sky. Pretty much.
All right. All right. There's more questions. Can you tell us more about the Pigrand buff?
So for
Panzergrenadier
Panzergrens, the main change is kind of awkward with not having the notes, but like the main change is we're kind of doing what we did the last time as well. We're shifting some of the power off of combined arms on the unit back onto the unit base. So the unit's going to be even less reliant on, excuse me, having combined arms. Yeah, sorry. Like so before, like way on release, like basically a third of the unit's power was on combined arms. The idea was that like if you had the bonus, it would be the most
So if you don't know what combined arms are, guys, it's the upgrade you get in the deck armory.
efficient combat unit, but if you didn't, it would be the least, which we found basically in practice to be a little too extreme. Because it was really easy to kind of get in team games, but very difficult to kind of consistently maintain in 1v1 in particular. So we're toning that back. So it's still the case where Panzer Grenadiers are reliant on CC. Like that final bonus that they get really does make a difference in terms of their efficiency. But now it's not going to be as much of like if you don't have the bonus, suddenly it's like an extremely terrible squad. So that's the main change for Panzergrens. So overall, they shouldn't be getting much stronger. Like if you play in team games, for example, you really shouldn't see a big difference in the strength of Panzer Grenadiers.
Yeah. So I'm seeing the chat going on, and I just want to note, like, we're not releasing the notes today. I'm sorry, everyone. That will come with the update next week. So this is really an overview of the changes that
Okay,
are
so this is the
coming.
patch.
But,
So by the time
Jason,
this
yesterday
video is
when you
actually
were
out on
talking
YouTube,
to
hopefully
me
the patch is
about
hit
those
then,
balance
and then
changes,
I'll
you
go
said
do a
something
proper
very
full
specific,
detailed review of all
that,
the patch notes.
you know, it's nice to do an overview, and but you'll know better when you have the game in your hand.
Okay,
right?
so I think that's probably it for the end of the video there, guys. We'll leave it there. And yeah, thank you very much for watching this little video, guys. And yeah, be sure to stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe on the Twitch channel and the YouTube channel. If you want to see more information about me covering Company Heroes 3, and hopefully I'll just get some more gameplay out for you soon, some matches, maybe even some 1v1s again. I'm kind of waiting for this patch, hopefully make the game a bit more interesting, a bit more balanced before I get back in. I've kind of been taking about a month or so break from Company Heroes in general. But yeah, hopefully this will make the game better and it'll be more interesting. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.